just going to kick it off. So I have Liz with me today. We're just going to go over basically a presentation about reaching your consumer at every stage of the buying journey. Liz is our ads manager, so she helps me come up with the plans that we're going to present to clients, and basically make sure that the combination of advertising we're doing is buttoned up. And Liz is great. She's going to go through this presentation and hopefully get a little value out of it.
Oh, sounds good. Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Jay. Well, yeah, thank you. We're going to jump in today, you guys. We'll, as Jay mentioned, my name is Liz, the ad manager here with 86. If you have any questions, we'll hold those until the end, everybody. So just keep those until the end. But if you don't want to forget what you're going to say, feel free to stick it in the chat too. And then we'll go through, we'll get to those once we wrap. So without any further ado, everyone, I'll go ahead and jump in. So giving you guys a little bit of a sneak peek of what we'll cover today. So going to talk about kind of the current state of digital, where we are, talk a little bit about the customer journey, where that fits in, going to kind of give you a little bit of a real life example and how we can put these into practice and reach the consumer that way. We're going to talk about how to best and most efficiently diversify your marketing mix and your media, and then solutions, and of course, how to see success, and then the next steps with that as well. So we will go into that, you guys, and kind of continue to dive deeper as we jump in today. So looking at the importance of digital in today's landscape. So you guys can see and probably know personally that digital and digital traffic is at an absolute all-time high, right? Probably no surprise there. What might surprise you is on average, the typical American has over 7 hours of screen time per day. And, more than 70% of that is spent, as you guys can see here, watching TV, videos, browsing websites, and on social media. I am certainly, unfortunately, hate to admit, but a person that falls into this statistic in the 70%. I, like a lot of people, I'm probably not the exception here, but like a lot of people, am always looking to try to cut back my screen time. Certainly could put my device down more and be away from the screens a little bit more. I will say my husband gives me kind of a hard time about it, but the retort, and what I always tell him, even though again, I do need to back off the screen time, he, with what he does for work, is away from it a little bit more. And so he gives me a hard time, but my retort for that is always, while admittedly, yes, we can go back off, it's not really like we're spending, 7 hours of our day sitting on social media, right? Or just sitting on TikTok or sitting on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. Everything that we really do, so much of the piece of the world is now online, right? So if you're wanting to watch a game, you might be running through a streamer. If you're just on your email from work, if you are looking up something, if you're shopping, if you are even just like listening to a podcast, and I like to plug in podcasts, listen to things like that while I'm working. All of that is now part of our online piece, right? And makes up that 7 hours and falls into that 70%. So with that in mind, like I said, you guys, always somewhere where I can, put the device down a little bit more, but all of those things typically will play through our devices. The nice thing that we can see as business owners, as advertisers, and as marketers is now we have so many different ways that we can get in front of people. It's not just static ads anymore. It's not just pieces here. There's so many different outlets that we can hit our target consumer and get in front of that. So while we might, be spending more and more time with our screens, we can definitely take advantage and use that, kind of make lemons out of lemonade there.
Liz, it's even like, I might be thinking listening to a podcast is like, obviously I'm not staring at the screen, but there's ads. There's always ads.
Always ads, yeah, and they get in there, and that's how they get it right there, right? They're through, and you're like, it's just short enough. You're not skipping over. They're always in front of us. So you guys can see here a few different examples, like we just talked about, and like Jay just mentioned, Alexa and Siri like playing your favorite radio station, right? Spotify is listening to the music and inserting ads in there, and you're listening to podcasts. Streaming TV, you might be watching an ad while you're watching HGTV or your favorite show. Google Maps, like already knowing your destination, plugging things in there, Gmail, finishing things off. Our consumer behavior and these platforms are incredibly intuitive. And so being able to hit people in different ways and get in front of them is incredibly important and really effective. You guys can see here that on average people spend about 45% of their waking hours on screens, which again is a little bit cringy. I'm the first one to admit it, always wanting to pull that back, but you can see all the ways that we can diversify, right? You see all the ways that we're interacting with these things that aren't typically quote unquote screen time, even if it may fall into there, but it's just using our phones for so many different things that we used to have to go to so many different outlets to find. So diving in a little bit, you guys, to the consumer journey, won't spend a ton of time here, but just like to point this out always, like to look at the sales funnel. And what's really nice about what we do with digital and targeted advertising is we can really hit anybody at any phase of the buying cycle. We are really across the board. If an advertiser comes to us or client comes to us with their goals and where they want to be, whether that's branding and awareness, maybe new in town or just trying to, really haven't advertised before, really wanting to push the word out, whether they're seeking someone who's ready to convert, right? Who's been doing their research, who's been looking for things already online, maybe even the retention phase, maybe just trying to show loyalty back to their customers, whether people are working, whether they're relaxing, researching, getting online to shop, all of those things, wherever they are, there's absolutely a digital product in mind, and we'll talk about that falls into that piece of the funnel. And we'll also cover multiple pieces of the funnel. So you may be an advertiser that's looking to, we want awareness, but we're also ready for those people that are ready to take action, right? We want to cover multitudes of the funnel. We absolutely can do that, whether in one singular product or looking over, multiple products. So what does that customer, or you guys, what does that buyer's journey look like? So as we're diving in, these are questions to absolutely ask yourself and to think about as we're going through. So first and foremost, are we reaching our customer along each step of the buying process, right? Or are we driving them to the competition? What, we in marketing always like to say the old adage of like, we can bring a horse to water, but you have to make them drink, right? So what does that look like when we bring them to you? When you're doing a successful campaign, we could be giving you all the hits, all the engagement, all the traffic in the world. What does that look like when that person comes to you? How can people interact with your website? This is a really important one. I always like to point out, you guys, this is, pictures and short content pieces are really great. They really help with engagement, but they also more often than not, in fact, the vast majority of the time, your website is your first impression, right? Kind of gone are the day and age where people are, just hopping in their car and they just drive right over, or they see it. Sometimes that happens, but most often, even if I'm, listening to the radio and I hear an ad, even if I see it on a traditional broadcast mechanism, what's typically the first thing we do? We pull it up online, right? Even if we're ready to take action, we're going to pull it up. We need to plug it into our maps, or we want to look at, the menu before we go to a restaurant. Usually we're looking online first. That first impression is really important. I've had many examples of times that I've decided not to go with a business because I've hopped online and looked at their website or, their Google business profile, things like that. And I'm like, ooh, not maybe what I'm quite looking for, right? That first impression isn't very strong. So it's everything from the information that's on your website to, the aesthetic of your website. Depending on the industry that you're in, doesn't have to be anything it's crazy. A ton of different information can be really short and sweet, does not have to look like the Apple site by any means. But having information that people can find easily, can find what they're looking for. And like I said, also has a nice look to it, right? Looks clean, looks up to date, gives people a positive representation of the business. Next piece of this is, how are you collecting leads? Making sure, again, those leads are short and sweet. So I know with Natalie, we were just talking about this before we kicked off, and looking at leads that come in, how are we utilizing those once they do come in? And what does that form fill look like if we're getting those leads? So again, we kind of go back to, we can lead a horse to water, right? If you're driving a conversion, or you're doing a conversion driving campaign and you really want people to fill out information, if you have 14 questions that on that questionnaire that came from, a campaign that you're running on Google paid search ads, people are probably going to abandon pretty quickly, right? They might have interest, they might convert back, but they're probably like, ooh, I don't know if I have quite time for this. Maybe I'll come back to it later. And maybe they will, or maybe they won't, but it's often an easy way to lose people. So keeping those short and sweet, name, phone number, email, name and email, really easy and sweet, and make that a really quick transition and quick capture for your business and for the customer to fill out. How are customers finding you today? When you think about your close rate, what does that look like when a customer contacts you, right? How much can we get through the process? What questions are we asking? What are we doing to retain and to get that business? And finally, you guys, what is the lifetime value of a customer? So this is one that I always kind of like to finish out with, as you guys can see here. And I always like to kind of share this anecdote. Like I was born and raised in the Midwest. And Des Moines, Iowa specifically, I lived there for most of my life. And when I went, after I graduated college, I went to Iowa State University for college, which is about 45 minutes from my hometown. I went to Minneapolis, which for those of you guys that don't know is about 3.5 hours north of my hometown. So I was in the vicinity for about the first 27, 28 years of my life, moved back to Des Moines. In that time, I used the same dentist the entire time I lived there in the area. In living in Minneapolis and living around the area, when I would come home and visit, like I would go to the same dentist. I liked them a lot. I knew them. I thought they did a great job. Like that was easy. They did a great work. I didn't want to necessarily look elsewhere. I was super happy with that, right? Now living much farther away, I can tell you guys, I unfortunately can't see the same dentist probably anymore. It makes it much more inconvenient, but have been going to the same one since I moved. My husband now asked me for my recommendation. Now he goes to that dentist, right? We had friends that moved into town, a husband and wife, and they asked us where we go. We recommended them and they're going there, right? So I use that example because of all those years, I was sticking with the same person that I liked. And not only from there, now we found someone else that I liked. I can't imagine we're going to change that unless something crazy happens. And we're also have people that are, using those recommendations and getting that. So thinking about the lifetime value of a customer, you guys, can be incredibly important. If you can get someone through your doors, if you can get them to start doing business with you, they typically want to stay with you. If they're getting what they're looking for, if it's easy, if it's convenient, if they've got nice people to work with, they want to stay. So the value of just getting that one person to pick up the phone, to come through the doors, to fill out a form, fill whatever that might be, can lead to huge business and huge success and a waterfall and kind of that domino effect of, additional people getting referred and coming through your doors as well.
The lifetime value is it's huge, especially for businesses like Natalie, like yours, where you have multiple services to offer somebody, because it's hard to judge what the cost of one lead coming in is, because the thought is once they're in, now you're going to be emailing them about the other services they might be doing, and they're never going back to your website ever again. Once they have a good experience working with you, like they're just going to engage directly with who they've engaged with, and they're not going back to the website. They're not clicking on any more ads. And I have so many clients that it's very difficult for them to put all that data together if they don't have a great CRM or a centralized database of customers to be able to get that number. But that number is super important when you're going to determine how much you should be spending on a lead.
That it is. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, diving in next, you guys, to a real life example. So talked about kind of the different ways with digital that we're getting in front of people, how people are utilizing digital, but now I'm going to probably kind of put that into, as you guys can see here, a real life example and show you. This is a little bit of a, Jack meets Jill kind of example, like you're used to in like school and elementary and those sorts of things. So you guys will get to see that, but it's really what we want to do here is just convey how many different ways we can get in front of people, right? How many different digital products are out there? What are you trying to do? How are you trying to get in front of your customer? And lay out different ways that we can do that. So to set the screen, we've got Jill. She's a home renovator. You can see here, she is looking to have the exterior of her home painted. So what does she do? Like most of us, she jumps online and starts doing the research, right? Maybe not fully committed yet, but thinks they're going to move forward, has some ideas, just jumping online, kind of gathering some information, looking at some, pictures, things like that, seeing what the next steps might be. So with that in mind, the next morning after, Jill's been doing some research, she checks her email and she finds out that she has an email from a local painter in town that's offering specials on, what do you know, their home exterior painting services, right? So right in her inbox, right there after, she's done that initial research, she's getting hit right away with the email. Later that morning, Jill is browsing Facebook and she sees an ad from the painting pros that reached out with the email. This time she's seeing a different carousel ad, which I always like to highlight here because this shows where, Jill is seeing before and after pictures, you guys. What's really nice about social media, and I always like to point that out because social media is nice in that all digital ads and different forms are incredibly effective and efficient depending on what your goal is. What I like about Facebook and what is nice there and the social media in general is it doesn't always feel like you're being served as much, right? Not that I don't click on every single display ad that comes my way. I'm like, oh, those are cute shoes. What do they have going on here, right? And convert back. But that's what I like about the social media aspect of it too, is it kind of fits really nicely in the feed of the consumer and everything, and kind of showcase those a little bit differently. So I always do like to point that out additionally as well. Now that she's seen some of those pictures, Jill is getting a little bit more interest, hops online, does a quick Google search specifically for painting services near me. And of course, local painting pros, the business that reached out to her, their Google business profile is at the top of the search results. So of course, Jill clicks on the listing and looks at the Google business profile a little bit more, right? Checking out the reviews, the phone number, address, they've got some pictures that are in there, information about the business, all of that. Later that afternoon, Jill asks her Alexa device to play the radio, and here's an ad from local painting pros promoting their painting services. So tapping into digitally getting into, your streaming devices and listening to podcasts and things like that and hearing those ads there. Once she gets off work later that day, Jill hops on her ESPN app to check the results from the baseball game. And what do you know? There's a banner ad right there, right? From what she's been researching, what she's been doing right in front of her, right? So not only are we hitting Jill in these different ways and hitting the consumer all these different ways, but we're gaining that awareness, right? We're getting more of those sticking points with her, which we'll talk more about too. Later that evening, watching The Office on Peacock, and again, a streamer, a really popular streamer, and sees another ad promoting local painting pros, and in that commercial space. And what I will say and point out, you guys, about what's really nice about what we do with streaming in app is people are a lot, and this way kind of with streaming audio as well and with podcasts and things, but when you are in a streamer, you are a lot less likely to turn the channel, right? Or to deviate away from that. It's a little bit harder than just changing the channel. So we tend to get really great conversion rates and really great finishing rates and completion rates because of that. The running joke this winter, the NFL, for I think the first time that didn't land, actually played games on Netflix on a streamer, but on Christmas. And Christmas has been historically the day for NBA. NBA Christmas games are a huge deal, right? And the running joke was like the NFL was stealing Christmas. And not only that, but they did it so well that they put it on a streamer so that people couldn't change the channel and go watch the NBA game while they were on commercial, right? They were going to pretty much stay in Netflix. It was going to be hard to turn it away. So those streamers offer a really great visibility and a really great way to keep that audience engaged and stay in front of them. It's a newer space, so it's also really nice because the localized ads really stand out among some of those national brands and things like that. They really pop out from what people are typically used to seeing when they're watching in a streamer.
You can't escape the ad, and you can't switch channels because there is no. If you leave the app and come back, it still makes you watch the ad.
Yep.
So there's no swapping, so you're stuck.
Absolutely. And that's a great point to point out. My husband and I were watching last night, you guys, something on Hulu, and we were gonna he's like, I'm exhausted. Do you want to just go watch? We can turn this on in bed or something. And I was like, yes, we have to we're gonna stop now because if we do this again, we're gonna have to watch the commercials again, right? When we turn it back on, it's gonna start us right in that same place. So let's just get here and then we'll turn it on, right? So yeah, Jay's absolutely right, which for us on the marketing side is great news. So Jill sees this, she's at all her touch points. She's like, okay, let's check more into this. Hops on her phone, directly Googles local painting pros on her cell phone, again, finds the information, clicks their website, fills out that free quote questionnaire, just her name, phone number, and email address, right? Quick, easy capture, and fills out that information, gets a call the next day, and sets up to get a consultation and book their services for a few days later. So all of this to say, you guys, not that we have to do everything that's on this list, right? We've got streaming TV, we've got audio, we've got display, email, all these different things. We're going to do what's best going to fit, what's going to work for your campaign and for your goals and what you're trying to do as an advertiser, as a business. But this just lays out all the different ways that we can get in front of people, all different types of the day, different ways and different efficiency to help you create the plan and have ideas of what would best work for you. So of course, as it goes, after Jill's home has been successfully painted, she takes action. The home's been painted, and now a few weeks later, of course, and the weeks after, Jill starts seeing ads for landscaping services and patio furniture. She's so impressed with how her home looks. Of course, it's that domino effect of needing to upgrade everything else, right? I got married about a year ago, you guys, and of course, we had the registry and we had all those kinds of things, and you start getting these things, and you're like, oh, that looks really nice. Well, now maybe we have to paint our room, right? Like we've got to paint that, or well, we probably need a new comforter for that guest bedroom, right? Because now it doesn't match as well because we got the new sheets. Like it's always that trickle down effect. And we were getting so many ads like this. So it's that same thing here. We're going to dig into this a little bit more, but essentially what is happening kind of with Jill and what we see as consumers is we start doing things, we take action on things, we're doing research, and we start getting ads for things that are in that same space, right? Because what Jill and her research and her online presence is telling us as marketers is, oh, she is in market for home renovation, right? She's looking to upgrade her home. She's a homeowner. This would be a good person to target with the type of ads or the type of services or products for that matter that we provide. So we've talked about a few of these different things. You guys kind of laid out how we can put these into practice. Now we're going to talk about each of these tactics and kind of break down what they do and how we can use them most efficiently, and how you, of course, can use them as business owners and as advertisers. So one of the first things that we talked about how on average it takes 8 touch points with a consumer for them to convert. Or we didn't talk about that, but that we did talk about all the different ways that Jill was seeing these ads, right? So this is where I mentioned you guys this would come back, and here's how this is coming back is with those on average 8 touch points. With that, we always recommend more than one tactic, right? In general, it's going to always, like with anything, depend on the type of goals that you have, depend on what you're trying to promote, depend on the business that you are, but 3 tactics on average tends to be key. It really leads to, you know, higher ROI, engagement, increased website traffic, longer relationships, better brand awareness. And then again, like I mentioned, you guys taking about that 8+ touch points for a consumer to convert. Now, this is the average number. Again, depending on what the business is, depending on what you're trying to promote or advertise, that's going to be a little bit different, right? If I see an ad for, you know, an HVAC, for example, I might say, oh, that business looks great, or that looks great, or that's a really great special that they're doing. And then about 4 weeks later, my air conditioner breaks and it's the middle of July and we're immediately calling that business, right? So we're not taking action necessarily right away, but we have that brand recall. We've seen it so many times and we've had so many touch points with it that's the first one that we see and that we call when it's time to take action or we need to take action. On the reverse, I might get targeted with an ad at, you know, 4 o'clock this afternoon for, you know, a really great margarita and like tacos, and be like, that's what we're doing for dinner, right? Like, I'm going to call them in an hour, right? Like, that's a really quick conversion. So again, it definitely depends on the product, what we're advertising, the services, anything like that. But on average, we really need those multiple touch points to get that brand recall. And then of course, to get the consumer to take action and hopefully convert from there. So the 3 different tactics, you guys, that we're really going to dive into are probably the 3 that we work with, I would say the most, but also from just a probably the most popular. And the reason being is just they tend to have really great, they can be done really inexpensively. A little can go a really long way, but very effective, very efficient. But it's also nice to know, because once we get kind of the technology that goes into these products, it makes it easy to apply those to different tactics. So for example, we're going to talk about targeted display. We're going to talk about, you know, of course, those display ads that you see on your phone, but that type of technology we can apply to streaming TV or video or streaming audio. That same is going to apply to geofencing, right? And then talking about search as well. So different things that kind of are the basis and the fundamentals of your campaign, but we can go so many different directions with. So with that, we are going to jump into targeted display. So this is probably one that you guys are very, very familiar with. Seeing these ads from time to time, you know, you go on Amazon or you go to, you know, a local, you're searching for shoes, you're looking for a great restaurant to go to, and all of a sudden you're getting those like-minded ads, right? That's exactly what targeted display is going to be. So we do this a couple different ways. You know, we target based on content, based on behavioral data, and based on demographic data. So just as it says here, you guys, we place ads or impressions in front of your typical clients, or the client that's, you know, in the market for what you're selling, for what you're doing. Wherever they might be online, so whether that's in-app, on a website, computer, cell phone, what have you. And of course, encourage them to purchase your products or services. We're going to measure the success through conversions and through clicks, right? So what's the traffic that's coming back and how are people taking action on this ad? You guys can see here, this is actually an ad that I captured right in the wild. So I was looking for new shoes, and looking for, you know, running shoes, and kind of just doing some general looking at, you know, Nike and things like that. And what do you know, I get an ad for Dick's Sporting Goods, right? Coming right in front of me. And not only for Dick's Sporting Goods, who sells a lot of different sporting goods equipment, but specifically for their shoes, right? Advertising their brands, what they carry, you know, getting right in front, a sale, things like that. So that's, and I will tell you guys, I probably clicked because it's that effective. I get ads like this all the time and I'm constantly taking action. I think a lot of us are like that. And that's why these types of ads work so effectively, is because there's so much action being taken and so much brand awareness being created. And like I said, we can do that that very inexpensively, you guys, to be able to get that in front of your consumer and have them take action. You guys can see here, as I said, the example, an ad for an athletic shoes being placed in front of someone who's active or enjoys running, right? So looking at their sort of quote unquote online profile, what is that telling us? Where, based on their information, everything they've done online, what kind of age demo do they fall into? What are their likes? Where are they spending time? You know, maybe they have a bunch of apps on their phone that are wellness apps and, you know, class signups and things like that. That would tell us this person is active, and this is a good ad to put in front of that individual. Targeting options that we can look at, you guys. Now, I will tell you, there are millions of targeting options that we can work with. So this very barely scratches the surface, really doesn't even put a dent in it. But what I like to showcase on this slide is just being able to show you how many diverse targeting options that are out there. So you guys can see here, we have everything from real estate and tender to affluent moms to millennial pet owners, right? Someone who's home remodeling and is looking to remodel their home. We have everything from as broad, you guys, from, you know, just people that are 18 plus, all the way to somebody who is falls in the demographic of 25 to 34, is a female, likes to shop at Zara, and has a golden retriever at home, right? Very granular in terms of how targeted we can get. Now, I can tell you, if you get probably that specific, it's going to be a little bit smaller of a group that's available to target, right? We're going to have less and less because we're kind of layering all those targeting on top. But we can definitely make this as specific or as broad as you're looking for. We ran a campaign that they were for the Girl Scouts not too long ago. They were in their cookie season, and they just wanted to hit everybody and let everybody know where their booths were set up and where you could go to buy cookies, right? Anybody who can purchase cookies, 18 plus, we want to just push this out to this specific geography. On the flip side of it, we can get really tailored where we're going after a specific zip code, and only females who have this income, who have children, and you know, are, I don't know, love the color blue, right? So it can get really specific as well. It just, again, depends on your brand goals, the goals of the campaign, what you're trying to do, and of course we can always help you find those targets as well. The next tactic, you guys, that we are going to talk about is geofencing. And as a reminder, this technology, this type of technology, especially when it comes to geofencing, again, just like what we have with this behavioral display, with video and everything, this geofencing tactic can be applied to both display and video, right, and audio. So wherever you want to take that, we can absolutely take this and apply it to the medium that you would like to utilize. So first and foremost, how does geofencing work? So with geofencing, what we're going to do is go in and draw a virtual fence around a particular location that you are looking to highlight. And what we want to do is draw a fence around that location, and then we're going to target people with ads using the location services on their devices. We are going to target them with ads because they have been in that particular location. So the example that I like to use is right here, you guys. So if you are opening a yoga studio in town and you are wanting to obviously attract new members, get new people through the door, locations that you would likely want to target, or would be a good thing to target, would be places like Pilates studios, you know, other yoga studios, fitness centers in town, maybe places like Athleta or like Lululemon, right? People that are probably in market to at least try out yoga and trying, you know, being active or doing something a little bit different, right? Maybe spas, even going to be kind of in that same base, you know, a little bit more zen, relaxing, you know, also, you know, active, good for you. All of those things can be really good places to go. You know, we can conquest, you know, competing locations. We can go after like locations, right, that are similar to your business. Whatever that might be, we are really targeting based on the location that a person was in. What's really nice about this too is we don't have to rely on cookie data. We're fully based on location data, which is really nice, which is how we serve as well the ads in the first place. The other really nice thing about what we do, you guys, with 86 and how we really differentiate our geofencing product, because I will tell you, geofencing is definitely the hot thing in digital marketing. People want to do it, they like it, which for a myriad of reasons that we'll get into. But what really makes what we do with 86 that much different and really kind of separates us from other things that you'll see in the market when it comes to digital is that we do, just like you guys can see the screenshot right here, we do go and we fence a particular location. So you guys can see those cars that are sitting right outside this particular yoga studio. The cars that are in that yoga studio, unless the person who owns that vehicle got out of the car and went into the yoga studio, they are not going to get an ad, right? So if I'm, my car's in the shop and my husband's going to go pick me up from yoga class, if he doesn't walk into the yoga studio, if I just, meet him in the parking lot and we go home, he's not going to receive an ad, right? This Mexican restaurant that's right next door to this yoga studio, not going to receive an ad, right? Because we did not fence through there. So a really big differentiator there. When we're talking about geofencing, most places are going to get you within the length of about a football field, which sometimes is fine. Most of the time is not, right? Because we're going to be capturing that Mexican restaurant traffic. We're going to be capturing, maybe highway traffic or street traffic, right? Maybe like the daycare center next door. We don't want that. Especially if you're in a strip mall, if you're in places like that, we just want the traffic that's going into that particular location. There's a reason we're fencing that particular location. That's the only traffic that we want. So really important that we're staying just within that particular zone and the zones that you guys have outlined for us to serve ads to people who have been there. What another, we talked about, you guys, the reason that geofencing can be so popular. This, I will say, is a differentiator for, again, what we do with 86. But one of the things that we can do with geofencing, which is really cool, is we can provide an audience insight report. This is something that is unique to what we do, but with that in mind, during the pre-sale process, typically is when we're going to run this. But if you give us a list of locations that you would like to look at, the traffic that's coming into those locations as well as their demographics, we can provide that for you. Maybe you want to just get that for your own location, right? Maybe you want a scope of, hey, I want to make sure we're targeting the right audience, right? We can get you that information. So this is, like I said, what we call an audience insight report, you guys, and this allows us to map and to get key insights into the type of demographics and the type of specifications of the audience or the consumers that are walking through your doors. So we can give you information over, you guys give us the time period that you would like to look at and the locations that you'd like to look at, and we can tell you of the people that walked through the door, they came from these zip codes, and they this percentage was homeowners versus not homeowners. This is the percentage that was, had children in the home or were married, had children, didn't have children, male versus female, their age demographic. We can show you your residents, as we talked about, you guys, as well as there's a couple other ones I'm sure I'm missing off the top of my head, but a lot of really cool key insights that you can get from this report. The reason that this is such a nice report too is that it gives you a lot of, it helps us make up that campaign for you. So make sure that we know that we're targeting the right people, based off just the eye test or thinking, you might think, oh, I think we need to target, this age demographic. Come to find out it's significantly older, significantly younger. Maybe it skews, more male or more female, right? Different things that we can do to make sure we're hitting those targets efficiently and effectively. So a really great tool that we can roll out and work with you on in the pre-sale as we're putting together that campaign.
Liz, one thing I want to point out here is like the geofencing advertising, it's working really well for us on like you said, places where there's foot traffic. So for example, one of the places we're using it really, really well right now is a car wash. So they're driving down a certain road, we're geofencing that to target them, but then we are tracking, did they show up on site to get their car washed, to get their car detailed? We obviously don't know what they did when they get there, but we know that they saw an ad and showed up on site. So for businesses that people have to show up at your location, they're incredible as far as at least showing who showed up there and getting a little closer to understanding a conversion for that. But also for like Natalie, for example, your service business, people probably aren't coming on site. You're going out to do estimates, but there's the opportunity there for you to say, hey, I want to geofence every paint store in Bergen County.
Literally what I wrote in my notes.
And anyone that goes to the paint store, like maybe they get home and they're just like, wow, this is going to suck. Maybe I should. So it works for service businesses and it works really well for businesses where you have to show up on site. So like the geofencing really, it's not like a one-trick pony. It works really well for like both those scenarios, which is amazing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great call, Jay. Yeah, and just as Jay mentioned, you guys, actually, that's exactly where I was going. So we can show you this, as he mentioned, right above. But then that's the other reason that people do like the geofencing tactic so much, is because we can show you, where that traffic is coming from, right? So a couple ways that we can do this. So you guys can see here on the right-hand side, We have all these locations. This is a local brewery or brewery client that we work with. And you guys can see that all of the, we can not only show you how many people walk through their location. We turn over these reports once a month. We can not only show you how many people, walk through the doors, but then also give you total visits, right? So we had, of course, some repeat traffic. Additionally, we can tell you where they came from. So if you were geofencing other breweries, other, paint stores, right? Other places from the other areas, we can tell you where those people came from that ultimately took action and came to your business. So that's going to be your foot traffic report. That comes standard once a month, every month. You'll get that out. But additionally, like Natalie, for example, Jay touched on it. People might not be coming on site, right? Typically, you guys will be going to them. They're, you're coming. You might not get that same be able to convert that same way with the foot traffic report. With that in mind, we do have a sales match rec report. Now, this is not a report that comes standard, but it does allow us to, if you're willing to give us your lead data or the sales data that you have, in your CRM, we compare that to people that we served ads to with no personal identifiable information. I'd have to double check you guys on what we need to exactly pull there. I want to say we just need just the email address, but we can basically tee that up and align that with people that we served ads to and tell you, okay, of these people that purchased from you, this is how many people came from the ads that we served, which is really cool. So we definitely have, because we're relying on those location services, you guys, we definitely have a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can do from, being able to show that ROI. Digital is a fantastic tool in that we can show ROI and show those metrics and get so much deeper than we can with other forms of advertising. But we can take that one step further with geofencing by being able to show, the physical conversions, of course, and beyond clicks and engagements and everything like that, which is also really important. So the next piece, you guys, and the next product that we'll dive into is our search space. So there's 3 different types of search that we're looking at, kind of shifting gears. We kind of went from display and geofencing kind of seeing the same name and now kind of turning it all the way over and going into search. But search is going to be incredibly important. We kind of teed off when we were talking earlier, you guys, and teed off this call, really going into, what does that first impression look like? What does the website look like, right? So much of that is done when someone does that initial search and when they're just trying to do that initial research, even if they're just trying to find your business specifically, that all starts typically on Google. Google houses more than 90% of the search traffic that is out there. Now, of course, we work with Bing and other search engines as well, but that just shows you how important it is to be playing, nice with these search engines and Google in particular. So the first one that we'll look at, you guys, is paid search, also referred to as Google AdWords, PPC. This is going to be paid advertising on search engines. So it's going to be really typically those top search results you see at the top of the page. There's typically about anywhere from 1 to 3 of these when you're doing a search, depending on the type of search that you're doing. And it's going to say ad next to it. So it's going to highlight the business, but it is going to say ad right next to it. So you know that this is a paid ad. But the placement obviously is very conducive to getting people to take conversions. Paid search is a really great conversion driving tactic. If you are trying to get people to, fill out form fills, take action, pick up the phone, make a phone call, this is absolutely a product and a tactic that we recommend when someone is really, we're all trying to, of course, get leads, get people through the door and everything quickly. But especially if you're really, wanting those conversions and wanting them really quickly, paid search is always a really good one to go to. The way this works is we are actually utilizing location services as well as keyword bidding. So going back to the yoga example, you guys, if I am, or even a better example, how many times have we ever jumped online and looked for, if I'm Googling Nordstrom and then I get other department stores that are right up top, right, that are competing with Nordstrom, right? Because what they're doing is they're bidding on Nordstrom as a keyword, right? You'll see that a ton. We do that with competing companies as well as keywords, on the website, products, things like that. If I'm looking for a particular HVAC system, right, because I'm like, oh, this is under warranty, so I gotta make sure we stick with it. And I Google that, HVAC systems brand, I'm probably going to get at least a couple local HVAC companies that specialize in that type of brand, right? That are bidding for that particular keyword. So that's really how we work with paid search, which is going to differentiate it from the next 2 that we'll talk about with both local and organic search results. So when we're talking about Boost Local SEO, Boost Local SEO is going to be, we talked about the Google Business Profile, right? You guys, kind of that mini profile, I like to say, I mean, it is a profile, but that mini spotlight on a website. I think especially coming out of COVID, you guys, the GBP has become just as important, if not more, than a website. I am by no means saying don't go get a website or don't worry about your website, only focus on your Google Business Profile, but it houses so much important information on it that it really has become incredibly vital to be up there. This is going to fall in about the top third, kind of in that top fourth to a third area of the web page. Typically, you guys have probably seen this. As you can see here, you see the website, you see the directions. It's going to fall there along with a lot of other local businesses. And the difference between what we do with that Boost Local SEO and paid search is this is all done optimization wise. So we have a local an SEO team that's actually in there, and they're doing all these searches. Or excuse me, they're doing all these optimizations to get in better standing with Google, because Google has all these things that they're prioritizing, that they're looking at. We want to make sure we're in good standing, and they're going to go on the local search sphere. Ultimately, if we are optimizing, if we're doing all the things that they're wanting, like the directory listings, adding pictures to the website, having a lot of reviews, all the information, all of those things, if our team is taking care of that for you, you should be ranking much higher when someone does a near me search or a best of search. Anything like that should spotlight you in the local results. And then additionally, we have organic search, and that's going to be really more based on the optimization of a website, the technical components of a website, again, trying to do good things that put you in good standing with these search engines, but more based around the technology, the keyword function, all of that based on the website. This is going to traditionally fall underneath the local search results, and this is going to house everything, you guys, from local businesses to national businesses to, you might see a blog. If I'm doing a search for a restaurant near me, I might get a blog that features, recipes that fall in that same type of food, right? Anything and everything's going to fall in the organic vein. And again, that's why we want to be able to make sure that we're top of mind and we're right there in front and we're getting that traffic. In marketing, we always like to say, and in SEO, the best place to hide dead bodies on page 2 of Google, because nobody goes there, right? So it's really important to be forthright and be right in front of people. Google did come up with this, like their local SEO, to make sure that, the smaller, medium to small size businesses and local businesses were not getting trounced by the bigger guys. If I'm looking for a pet store in town, what could happen is I could get trounced by, Target and their pet stuff, PetSmart, Petco, where now I'm going to get presented with those options as well, but also, local boutiques or local pet stores in town that are going to be featured there, which is really great. And it makes it so, especially with the local piece, we can compete with all those different businesses and all those different places that are out there, which is awesome. So why is this important to your business, you guys, when we're talking about, particularly in search? So you guys can see here that over 60% of consumers will disregard a business if they can't find them online. I feel like I use this stat a lot, and I feel like I go double check it every time I'm going to use it because it almost seems low. 60, it feels like it should be higher than that. But even at 60%, that's a huge margin of the consumer base that you could be missing out on if you're not looking at your search, if you're not looking at your online presence, if you're not looking at your website, right? All of those things are going to be really important. I like to tell people when I'm talking about this, you guys, that, we, the millennial generation is now like early 40s to, I believe, late 20s, if not like early 30s. So late 20s at the youngest. The reason I say that is because that is the first generation to really grow up with the internet, right? Having those tools at their disposal, having all that accessibility and growing up with all of those things. So there is a very slim chance that you're going to come across a millennial who's going to disregard the internet when they're doing a search or when they're trying to find a product or service, right? And that generation is only continuing to get older and continuing to probably broaden that 60% gap. I would challenge that anything younger than millennials is definitely not going away from the internet, right? So it's really important that, if you're thinking, oh, well, they'll find us, don't worry about it. Things are changing. Even if it worked before, it might not be working the same way now, and probably isn't, especially as people become more accustomed to these tools, the access that they have, all these really easy things at our disposal. COVID made those things ramp up even quicker, right? Having information in the Google Business Profile, like, do you need to wear a mask? What are the safety protocols? Like, is this any different? Can we order to go? Like all of those things. And I certainly have no intention or do not want to go back to a COVID time, but it did give us a couple of those things that, made things a lot more convenient that we didn't necessarily want to give back when it was over. So it's really important to be really strategizing and thinking about that, thinking about how convenient the world has become and making sure that we're not missing out on that huge consumer base because we want to shy away from some of these online tools. So looking at the organic search strategy, you guys, we won't spend too much time on this one, but always just like to kind of take a look so what this looks like, I should say. When it comes to local and organic SEO, what's going to be different about that versus really any other product that we work with in the digital sphere is that it is a service. It's really us doing a lot of work behind the scenes to make your website, to make your online presence, to make your business more optimal online, right? So we always like to say that because you're not going to see that initial pop. Like we're not going to, if we're running a display campaign, we're going to hop on the reporting a couple, days later, and you're going to see stuff coming out, right? You're going to see clicks starting to generate. With SEO, it is a slower burn. It really takes anywhere from, 8 to 10 weeks before we really start to see that uptick and really start to see, those optimizations or that work of those optimizations start to really happen. So to give you an idea of how that works, so month 0, we really look at the analysis, and we do an SEO workbook. We really scope out everything on your site, on your campaign, on your business is going to be conducive to running a really effective organic campaign. And then come up with an additional strategy in order to achieve those things. Once we get into, like I said, you guys, about that 2 to 3 month mark, we start doing monthly reporting and communication. We want to continually sit down and talk to, you as business owners, as advertisers, and looking at, is this working? How can we maximize performance? What's going better? What is going really well? What could be going better? Where can we optimize differently? Constantly working with you and communicating with you to know the effectiveness of the campaign, or to know, hey, maybe we need to go a little bit different direction because we're not quite seeing what we thought would get us the best results here. And then a campaign strategy refresh. So this is going to be at every 6 months, again, reevaluating that strategy. Maybe we accomplished what we wanted to do in that first 6 months. Hopefully we did. Maybe there's many aspects to your business and you're like, okay, for this next few months, we really want to focus on a different area of the business, right? The example that I like to use, you guys, the hair salon I go to also has like a clothing boutique that's attached to it. And so while the hair salon is kind of the bread and butter of the business, they really want to get out the word and get the clothing boutique and all the shopping and everything like that. And so, we actually worked with them on an SEO campaign. And part of that next 6 month strategy was focusing on, okay, now we look really good. We don't want to go away and lose the traction that we've gotten from the hair side, but now we want to look at how we can kind of refresh the campaign to be able to drum up more and applicable results based on the, the boutique and the clothing side of the business, the commerce side of the business, and retail, I should say. So always really important. Sometimes that's not going to change. Sometimes we're doing really well. We want to keep going. We want to focus on those really key aspects of the business. And, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? So all things you want to look at and adjust, but knowing that even though you're not getting those same instantaneous results, you're constantly having that communication with our team to go through all these things and find out what is going to make you the most successful in the search space. So to bring it all home, you guys, a few things to think about. So of everything that we talked about, how can all of this benefit your business, right? What are areas that will benefit you or benefit your marketing strategy? And what are things we can look for? What marketing strategies will bring in the most customers, right? What's going to be the most effective? Again, what's going to be most effective for, Natalie, what you guys are doing in painting services is going to be different from what's most effective from a local restaurant, right? All these things can be different. That's going to differ from an fully e-commerce based business, right? So what is going to be the most effective and how do we best find those strategies? And then finally, what marketing strategies are going to bring you the most ROI, right? We talked about painting and that being an on-site. So thinking about geofencing, is that going to be really effective? It sounds like it absolutely would be. Natalie, if we're talking about bringing in more leads, SEM would be one to think about, right? It's a great conversion tool. It brings leads. That's what we're optimizing for, is to get those. So looking at all of these tactics and just thinking what strategy is going to be most effective and what type of campaign can we put together to, of course, drive ultimately what's going to be most important, the most ROI, right? Because if we're not bringing you in revenue, the investment that you're putting towards this is not going to be worth it, right? So we want to make sure, of course, bottom line and most important, we're bringing in the dollars to your business. So looking at all of these strategies, you guys, as we talked about, 2 or 3 or more strategies equals more revenue, right? The more that you're doing. So you guys can see here, we've got the streaming audio in our radio. We have streaming TV, social media, YouTube, organic in the search space, like we talked about, geofencing, programmatic video, all of these different things. And even, it's like kind of like, a tree of things that you can do, right? So even if we're looking at display, there's so many different ways that we can do display to make that effective, and so many different types of tactics that live under the display umbrella, right? With social media, we've got everything from TikTok to Facebook to Instagram and more. Streaming TV, we've got, large and small screen splits. We've got, streaming TV that only goes to those premium networks, right? Like your Apple TVs and your Disney Plus and Hulu's, as well as, targeted streaming TV that only, inserts on live sports, right? So I say all that to say is there's so many different things that we can do here, you guys, that make these really effective. And even within each product that we really offer, there's so many offshoots of that to really tailor this to best own it to, again, I know it sounds like a broken record, but your individual goals, your needs, what's going to move the needle best for you. And then a few things, you guys, to look for, and we'll wrap up here. I believe this is one of our final slides, but to wrap up here, we'll look at some things that you can do and some things that you can do right now to take away from today. Again, we can always help with these things, but just things to think about that are going to, that are things that you can do. They're free tools. They're great things to just make sure that you're aware of. They're going to be really beneficial to your business and what you can do today to really move the needle. So first and foremost, we've talked a lot about leads and conversions, right? And tracking that, you guys. So when those are coming, are you collecting them? Maybe they're not in use right now. Maybe you're going to save them for a rainy day. Maybe you've got a campaign that you want to run tomorrow. Regardless, whether you think maybe we'll do a promotion one day, maybe you want to do an email campaign one day, this is a great way to start getting those up. And again, just save them, whether saving them in a CRM, saving them, in a doc somewhere. Collecting those emails can be really pivotal and be really important, and a great way to, again, to have for something someday, even if it's not right now.
Liz, can you just touch on
Yep.
what the Facebook lookalike campaign is? I think a lot of people don't know that exists.
Absolutely. So based on emails, you guys, and based on that first party targeted data, we can actually, just like it says here, we can run Facebook or lookalike campaigns in general. While we have Facebook here, not necessarily just exclusive to Facebook, we can run those campaigns on display. We can run those on streaming TV. But essentially we're taking data from customers that you already have, maybe leads that you've acquired somewhere, and we are then directly targeting those individuals with those ads. And then additionally, targeting those with lookalike campaigns to that type of advertiser. So if, the bulk of my emails, the bulk of the information I collected is, adults who are 25 to 34, who are homeowners, we can create a really great lookalike audience from that, right? To say, okay, this is not, we don't have every single person we're going to target was on this list that we accrued, but we can target based on a lot of the similar demographics and similar behavioral data that these people have. We're going to push that and push that forward, because that seems to be a really optimal demo and a really great optimal category for us to target. Then, of course, hopefully driving in more people. Yeah, good question, Jay. The next thing, you guys, is claiming your Google Business profile. So as a quick plug, this is absolutely something that we can do for you at 86. If you're like, this just seems too complicated, let me turn this over. We can take care of this for you. We can manage. That's what we do with local SEO. We can absolutely manage that Google Business profile, do your local SEO for you. But even if you're thinking about that, even if you want to move forward with us, even if you don't, whatever that might be, claiming is a really good first step. That is 101 when it comes to Google Business Profile. It's going to be the first thing that somebody sees. And it's the way that Google prioritizes you. If you don't have that Google Business Profile claimed, Google is going to deprioritize it. That's one of the first things they look at. So making sure that you have that claimed is going to be first and foremost. Now, again, you guys, like I said, as a quick plug, we can definitely do that for you. I like to equate, us running your local SEO like having somebody who, comes in and does your landscaping regularly, or comes in and, if you have like a pool person or something, right? Or somebody who comes in and cleans your house or does anything like that. It's a little bit more like a little bit more complex. It is something that, you know, a lot of people are like, I have no idea how to do this. But I equate it to that type of service is because it is something that in theory you could do yourself, right? But also it's probably, if you do it yourself, it's going to take you a lot longer to do it because we just don't know the nuances, right? I always like to say, like, if I had a friend that started a business and they were like, oh, well, you're in this space, can you just do this for me? I would tell them no, right? Because I'm like, I just don't know Google that way. It's kind of like going to a mechanic and you have the person at the front who's like, oh, we have to do this because of this. And then we probably should change your tires because of this. And then, but they know all about this, but they aren't the ones who are actually kind of under the hood making the changes, right? That's what it really is with local SEO, is we have a whole team of experts that dedicated to this. This is all they do. They work on this consistently. And again, can do this really inexpensive to make that a service. So you know it's being done right. You know it's being done correctly, efficiently. And again, you don't have to worry about it. The next piece of this, you guys are going to be emphasizing reviews. Reviews are a really heavy piece into where Google weights your profile and where they rank you on their search results. The more reviews you have, the more positive reviews you have, and the more consistency you have in your reviews, the better you're going to be. Things that you can do here, if you send invoices, right? Maybe you have a QR code that goes on your invoice. People can just scan it and make it really easy. Maybe you are, you have like if you have a brick and mortar business people are coming to, it's a trifold at the counter, right? People are checking out and they can just, again, scan it, bringing awareness to it. Maybe saving those emails, right, that we talked about, and sending out emails to ask for reviews. All really good things that are going to really move the needle with your Google Business Profile and your search rankings that you can do and do completely for free. Next piece of this, you guys, is just to update all of your social profiles. Ensure your about sections are consistent, use accurate information, look at keywords. I always like to tell people, you guys, it's not that we have to have all this consistent content, like go home and make, the next TikTok video that's going around, right? Or the Facebook trend or anything like that. But it can just be really simple things. Maybe posting before and after pictures from the job that you just did. Or, we're in the middle of summer. If you're an HVAC company, maybe it's, hey, here are a couple quick tips on how to stay cool or how to make sure your AC unit is running efficiently. It could be simple things like, hey, just a reminder, we're going to be closed on Labor Day, right? Like little things like that, but just to let your audience and your customers know that you're there. I can't tell you guys how many times I've gone to like someone's Facebook page and they haven't posted in forever. And I'm like, ooh, are they still in business? Are they like, I don't know if they're still going, and then you have to do more research. So having just those quick content pieces, those little things that just let everybody know you're still there, giving them little insights, keeping that content consistent on your social channels can be a really great way to stay in front of your audience and really, again, create that really organic awareness. Awesome, you guys. Well, with that, we will wrap it up and we can jump into if you guys have a couple questions. But yeah, otherwise, that will conclude us for today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's very
Absolutely.
good.
That was great, Liz.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, any questions that you guys have that I can answer?
Yeah, I think I definitely want to learn a little more about the geofencing. I think it's something that we've got a lot of paint stores in the area that we go to as well. So, but yeah, I think I definitely want to do that. And we've been getting more and more calls where it's, oh, I used to paint this high ceiling in my room, I can't do it anymore. Yeah. I went to the paint store. It's too much. I'm overwhelmed. I need to have a professional come in. So yeah, we're probably missing the mark on some of those leads. So yeah, it's definitely something I want to look more at. My question I had for myself, and we were talking about the, not having a lot of questions on forms. We have like 3 different forms on our website right now for estimate requests. I need to, I think, look at those and like see if we need to scale anything back with the amount of questions that we ask, and just getting the imperative stuff, and then everything else we can ask on the phone or text, however we get in touch with them.
And, that can be a little bit of both too, Natalie, because, if somebody is seeking you out independently, or, find it even like through Google or through search or what have you, when they're really in the market, you can probably go a little bit farther than just name and email, right? Or farther than that, because people they want to get in contact with you. They're trying to make that conversion too. So those are things to think about too, because we can kind of marry the two. Like I always say, keep those short and sweet, and absolutely do. Don't make it overwhelming. But someone who's coming to your website that finds you, that's seeking out your services versus I see, we're kind of in the market to paint, but I've kind of been doing, and we're just awareness, and I see an ad for your business and I click it, and all of a sudden I see 20 questions and I'm like, oh, we'll do this later, because I wasn't necessarily quite that wasn't on my radar to be doing right now, if that makes sense, right? So oftentimes we'll have clients that will do, a landing page or something too, right? Or have something like that where it goes to, it's shorter and sweeter for the people that, to capture that attention that we're bringing in from online really quickly. And then have a separate one that can gather more information just to make sure we're getting that conversion if needed too. So can definitely marry those two. But yeah, I for the most part always recommend, short and sweet. That's going to be your best friend. People's attention spans are very quick and very short. I will tell you, like, if I'm even searching online, I get an ad for something. I keep going back to the shoes example, but like, I cannot stand when I go and I see like I'm getting highlighted a product and I'm like, oh, that looks great. And I click it and all of a sudden I'm on like the retail page and it's everything that they sell, right? Or it's like I saw a dress that I liked and all of a sudden I'm like, this is all the dresses they have. I'm like, I don't have time to go through the 400 dresses that they have on. Like, I wanted to look at this one dress, right? So I always recommend that too. Like, that's always important to make sure we're taking people exactly where they think they're going to go. And lead forms are very similar that way.
Yeah, anything once it gets to like past 4 questions, like I'm tapping out. I'm looking for somewhere else with a shorter form to fill out.
I know, you're like, I'm gonna keep that tab open, I'll come back to it, and then it sits open for weeks and weeks. Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. Yeah. Other questions? And Jay, anything else from you?
No, it's great.
Awesome. All right, you guys. Well, I appreciate it so much. Thank you guys so much for being here. Great to see everybody. Please let us know, Natalie, to follow up with any questions, comments, concerns. We can get anything together too. But yeah, anything you need, let us know, and we can absolutely go from there.
Great. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thanks, you guys. Have a great rest of your day.